Hey guys, welcome back to another week of Ledger AMAs, Ledger Ask Me Anything. We are here, week 3, here with Fabrice and Sylv, and we are going to be talking about blockchain. So we're having the blockchain 101. What is it? What's going on? And what are we doing with blockchain at Ledger? So thank you both for being here today. How are you?
Good.
Hi.
Hi.
Not too confined?
Yeah, a bit.
A little bit.
Just enough.
Okay, let's ask the million-dollar question. Fabrice, what is blockchain? Can you tell us all?
What is blockchain? This is a very, very tricky question to answer. Okay, this is a bit like answering really a million-dollar question, but I will try to maybe summarize it or do some kind of analogy. It's not perfect, but maybe it will help a bit for, let's say, newcomers. So let's assume I want to send a letter to Sylv. Okay, so basically the way I would do it today, I would write on paper, put a stamp on it, go to the post office, put the letter in a box, and then somehow it will get sorted out by a company, or maybe it's in France we have this company that will actually deliver your mail, and so in the end, after being sorted out, it will be delivered across region, and at some point, one guy will go to Sylv's place and he will put the letter in his mailbox. So this is the old way of working. This is really complex. Several people are involved. You will have mistakes. Okay, people will make mistakes, and in the end, we invented something better. We invented emails. So you could think that blockchain is a bit like email, but for all kind of application, but it's not entirely the same. With emails, for instance, you have this big providers of email services, and they can actually decide to block your emails. Okay, I have a Gmail account, they can basically lock it. So this is still not exactly perfect. So you don't have any more humans dealing with sorting out emails. That would be impossible. But now you have the risk of being locked out of this system. So that's where blockchain comes in. It's basically similar to email, but anyone can be his own server, his own mail server. So anyone can run the system. And so there is not a single entity that can actually own it. That involves a lot of complex question because it is decentralized. You have to find a way to agree on the state of all the messages because everyone is running its own postal service. So basically, how do we make sure that everything is correct? I would say because of, or thanks to cryptography and game theory or things like that, we managed, and by we it's not me, okay, but several engineers managed to create those blockchains that are actually finding consensus and with which you can deliver message in a decentralized manner. So it's kind of my explanation from postal service to email to blockchain. I didn't mention any money because for me, blockchain is really about sending messages. It just happens that those messages can be considered as financial money.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. And then could you kind of tell us, what do you do with blockchain? What are you doing at Ledger? What's your position? Give us some information.
Yeah, with pleasure. So I'm Fabrice. I joined Ledger 1.5 years ago. I'm basically responsible for what we call coin integration. So I'm in charge of blockchain support across our products. So whether it is the hardware wallet or the Ledger Live or the Ledger Vault, we need to support many blockchains. And so I'm here like I'm kind of the blockchain guy. So that's mainly the reason I'm here today in this AMA.
Thank you. And Sylv, how are you? Can you tell us what you do at Ledger?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Sylv Chevet. I've been with Ledger for 2 years. I joined right after graduation, and I'm a product manager on the Ledger Vault. So everyone on this AMA knows about the Ledger Nano S and Nano X. These are our consumer products, but I work on the enterprise grade product. So I am basically building a giant Nano S for banks.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. So could you sort of go more into the history of blockchain?
Absolutely. So there's been a long, let's say, history of people trying to create, let's say, a way to store value on the internet. So you could argue that we already have it because everyone has a bank account, and these bank accounts are managed by banking systems, and these banking systems run on internet or IT infrastructure. But the issue with this kind of system is that it's only as trustworthy as the person holding your data. So people have been trying to find ways to have a decentralized way to store value rather than putting everything at the bank and trusting the bank with keeping tabs on everything. They thought, okay, maybe we could have several people agreeing on a state of things, a global ledger. So cryptographers have been working on this for quite a long time. And there was a solution that was offered in what is now considered like the birth of blockchain technology, and that's the Bitcoin white paper. So the Bitcoin white paper was first released in 2008, and the first Bitcoin block was mined in 2009. So that's the first time the network actually was alive. And this white paper explained how we could build a way to transfer value, as Fabrice said, this decentralized post office system between people, without ever having to rely on any single centralized party. So the person who wrote this paper, this person or the group of person, because we don't know who it is, who wrote the Bitcoin white paper, is called Satoshi Nakamoto. We still don't know who it is. And then these group of people, we don't know who it is, actually walked the talk because they actually built the system based on the design that they explained in the Bitcoin white paper. So that was let's say the first generation of blockchain. So for a while, from 2008, it gained a lot more adoption, and we had a huge what is called a bull market, where Bitcoin actually reached $20,000 a couple of years ago. So that's probably the prime time for Bitcoin. But there are other blockchains that exist in the same moment. So for instance, you have another blockchain which sort of piggybacked on the Bitcoin, and that's called Ethereum. So Ethereum is another blockchain that aims to solve a different kind of problem. So Bitcoin only aims at solving the issue of, I want to transfer money. I want to have a decentralized way of doing so and storing my value. Ethereum says, okay, Bitcoin built a lot of neat things, and we can actually use these to do decentralized computation. So for instance, rather than having one company holding all your data, it could be distributed across different servers, and you could pay the servers to run your computation for you in more of a globalized cloud sort of thing. So it's a bit vague, but that came about in 2015. So that would be, let's say, second generation blockchains. And then now we have even more difficult things such as interconnection blockchains, such as Polkadot and Cosmos. They aim at putting these blockchains together. So you could consider them as the third generations of blockchain, and these are much more recent. So TLDR, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and anything afterwards.
Got it. And obviously, we know at Ledger ourselves what's the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But Fabrice, maybe for the others who are just tuning in, could you sort of explain what's the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain?
Oh, so I would say Bitcoin is one of many blockchains. It's actually Bitcoin is a network, a decentralized network on which you have this cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. Like Sil was saying, you have Ethereum, which is another blockchain, so it's another decentralized network. The two don't interact with each other. You cannot send Bitcoin on the Ethereum network, and simultaneously you cannot send Ethereum on the Bitcoin network. So they are completely different in the way they work. Sil briefly mentioned that Ethereum is actually a smart contract platform, so you can execute code in the blockchain. Whereas on Bitcoin, it's not designed to do so. You can do it, but it's not really designed to do so. Bitcoin is really designed to transfer value. On other chains, you will have many new, let's say, features. Now you have some chains that really are designed to only serve as DEX, so decentralized exchange. They have this feature embedded. You have other blockchains that aim to really, let's say, bring more content or create a bunch of tokens. This is still possible in Ethereum, but that was, let's say, one of the main use cases, tokenization of everything. So you see that on Ethereum, we have many, many tokens, but you can see it on other chains as well. So eventually, each blockchain is trying to bring us, or at least to solve an issue. It could be the speed, it could be the ability to handle thousands of transactions per second, but it could be the ability to run secure and verifiable smart contracts. So all of these blockchain, even though they look quite similar, under the hood, they can be very, very different. And we didn't even mention the part where they have all this logic about the consensus. Of course, there is what you see on the blockchain, but there is really what is happening under the hood and how all those nodes and all those blocks are getting mined, because it's not exactly the same between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and on new blockchains, it's completely different. Maybe you heard about the proof of stake blockchains that are like really a new generation of blockchains. So essentially what I want to say by this is every blockchain is different. So it's not like there is one better than the other. It's really each time you have to consider what are the pros and cons for each project.
And Fabrice, during what you just said, you had briefly spoke about miners. Could you sort of explain to us what is mining?
Okay. So like Sil was saying, originally, the first blockchain created was the Bitcoin blockchain. And one of the main principles it relies on is the fact that people will have to solve a cryptographic puzzle. And by doing so, they will use their laptop, their mobile phone, any piece of hardware that they can to run the Bitcoin software. And they will activate this mining option. Uh, Being a miner, it's actually being a real actor in the decentralized process. You actually are one of the many that can actually build the next block and include or not include some transactions. And there is this fight between all the miners where it's important to have as much hashing power as possible to be able to be the first to create the next block. And so miners are today, let's say, entities that are running huge amount of specific boards to calculate these puzzles and to find the solution. And they are all competing with each other in order to make the next block. The reason they do this is because making a block is not for, I mean, it's not for free. You will consume energy, you will consume a lot of, you will have to buy the hardware, maybe even pay some people to run those hardwares. And eventually you are rewarded when you find the block by a number of predetermined Bitcoin. So right now you are earning 12.5 Bitcoin per block. And in very few days, this number will be divided by 2. And it will be 6.25 Bitcoin per block. This is what we call the halving. And it happens every 4 years. So you might ask, why does it happen every 4 years? That's the rule. That's how it's coded inside the Bitcoin protocol. And so it might not be exactly the same way on another chain. So Bitcoin being the most famous one. When people refer to mining or to halving, it's usually miner on the Bitcoin blockchain and halving on the Bitcoin blockchain as well.
Thank you for that. And so now that we sort of know what is blockchain, Sylv, could you explain to everyone what are the benefits of blockchain?
So I wouldn't talk as much about benefits as more about characteristics. A blockchain is, let's say, gives you a set of tools, and with these tools, you can solve very specific problems. So let's say that you have Bitcoin. Let's say Bitcoin is a hammer. With a hammer, you're not going to paint a wall. So it's a bit the same difference that you would have between Bitcoin and, let's say, a payment system like Visa. So by design, Bitcoin is made to be distributed. That means that there is no central party that can control the flow of information. That's the characteristic. The benefit is that you have no control over this. There is no way someone, or it's made extremely difficult and increasingly difficult with the whole mining system that Fabrice explained, that one central entity can control the whole network and decide that now, Fabrice, you don't have any money and I'm stealing all of yours. The trade-off of this is that it requires a lot of computing power because the consensus algorithm are based on solving puzzles. So benefit is distributed and it's secure, but the trade-off is that it's a lot slower. So the transaction speed on Bitcoin currently, I believe, is 6 transactions per second, which is extremely low compared to payment systems such as Visa, where you can have thousands of transactions per second, but they're not made this way. By design, Bitcoin was not made so that you could pay for, I'm really French, pay for a baguette or something really, really cheap. But if you want to store 20,000 euros and make sure no one can seize it, and in very specific circumstances that can happen. We've seen in, for instance, in Venezuela, you had people that got their assets stolen or completely seized by the government, or your currency is suddenly devaluated by the government. You need a way to store it outside of a bank, for instance. Bitcoin can be your go-to solution. So that's one of the characteristics. Another characteristic is that it's open. Most blockchains are called public blockchains. That means that everyone can see how the code works and what the transactions are. You have some blockchains that have specific characteristics, such as, for instance, Monero or Grin. They're called privacy coins. On these blockchains, everyone can see the code, but if Fabrice gives me his address, I will not be able to see how much he owns on this account. On Bitcoin, you can do that. That's why they're called pseudonymous, because if I get to know what Fabrice's address is on the blockchain, it's just like your bank account number. If I get Fabrice's bank account number, I can't know how much he owns. But if I get his Bitcoin address, I know exactly how much he owns. So again, just like the speed and the security, you have benefits, which is transparency. You know exactly how much everyone owns, but you also are able to track everyone. So characteristics of blockchains are they're distributed, they're secure, and they're public, I would say.
Okay. And can we use blockchain for different things other than crypto?
Absolutely. So there was a funny saying on the internet in the beginning is that all people thought that the internet was email. And it's a bit the same for blockchain. Most people think that blockchain is just Bitcoin, or they're just this weird currency with which you can buy illegal things on the internet. But as I said, it's a set of tools that gives you certain characteristics. So with this, for instance, you have a plethora of projects that have been kickstarted to leverage these characteristics. So for instance, you have, with blockchain, you have a way to store data in a decentralized manner, and you have a way to run programs in a decentralized manner. So for instance, you have a project that I think is really funny. It's called Augur, and it's a decentralized betting platform. So you can bet on anything and have, without even knowing who's your counterparty, you can bet, okay, I think tomorrow it's going to rain, and I'm ready to bet $5 that is going to bet, or 5 Ether if you really, really want to bet. And you can set the terms of the contract on the blockchain. And if you were to do that with a notary, it would cost you a lot of money. If you were to do that with something else, it could fail. So they decided, why not do it on the blockchain? You have some projects that I really, really like. It's called CryptoKitties. So it's a way to store collectibles on the blockchain. So they've built this amazing game where you can trade cats on the blockchain. So they are digital objects. And when you actually own a CryptoKitty, you show, because of it's enforced by blockchain, that you are the sole owner of this kitty. So I think these are really neat projects. So these are, let's say, smaller scale project. Among the very big scale project, you have something called IPFS, Interplanetary File System. It's a way they're trying to build essentially a cloud in a completely distributed manner. So rather than storing your data in a single entity that would actually own your data, they are trying to find a way to do it in a peer-to-peer fashion where you could store it everywhere and no one could get censored. So I think what's really interesting is everything that we're currently not seeing. We're trying to apply blockchains to a lot of existing use cases, for instance, supply chain. But what I'm really interested about is all the use cases that we didn't think about and that we'll bring about with this technology.
I see. Thank you so much. And Fabrice, do you have anything to add maybe about the future of blockchain?
There is, I would say, many issues that blockchain company or foundation or teams must tackle first. But like Sil was saying, there are also a lot of maybe industrial projects around blockchain, and not only, sorry for that, CryptoKitties, but actually real companies are trying to leverage blockchain technology to maybe be more transparent with their end users or consumers. So yes, supply chain might be an option. We are talking about also tokenization of energy. How do you track energy, and how can you make sure that the energy you're consuming is green? So many projects like this are, let's say, popping up, and they are being tested, or proof of concept are being made. But I don't really know where blockchain will be in the next few years. That's also what makes this space really interesting.
Thank you. And could you guys sort of talk to us about who is Satoshi Nakamoto? We've been hearing this name a lot, and we really want to know, who is Satoshi?
We have a joke internally at Ledger that we have a list of usual suspects among the employees, but we're not allowed to to disclose it. So we actually have no idea. Some people have come forth saying they are Satoshi Nakamoto, but so far no one has been able to formally prove that they control some of the money that Satoshi Nakamoto is said to own, and that Satoshi Nakamoto would be the only person to own. So that's something that's really amazing when you think about it, that either a person or a group of person would be able to build this technology and bring about this whole ecosystem without us knowing who it is. That's I think that's something that's really interesting.
Do you guys have any guesses of who it could be?
There are many, let's say, studies or documentaries about the topics. There were many people involved at the origin of Bitcoin. Okay, Satoshi Nakamoto was in the email loop of people talking about how to improve the consensus, how to actually design and code the Bitcoin program. But no one really know, and that kind of makes it a legend. That's why it's also so powerful. You don't need to know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, because you have the code. You can just look at it, and if you are a developer and if you can read this and understand it, then you can check by yourself how it works. You don't need to know exactly what the man said or the group of people said. You can actually check that it's doing what it was meant to do.
Yeah,
So
Fabrice.
I believe not knowing who Satoshi Nakamoto is actually a great thing. And I would definitely advise people, let's say, be cautious when people say, I am Satoshi Nakamoto. This is usually something very, very tricky. And like Sil was saying, it's not hard to prove. If you are Satoshi Nakamoto, there are like verifiable manner to prove it. You can move the first Bitcoins. Only Satoshi Nakamoto could. So far, no one moved that. So I would say no one really know who is Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay, so that one will still remain a mystery. But
Yes.
Satoshi, if you're out there, we're looking for you. And Sue, could you sort of explain to us, what are the 24 words?
Oh, that's a very tricky one. So everyone who owns a ledger product knows that when you turn on one of the device, it will give you a list of 24 words. And it's really complicated to understand why you exactly, what these words actually mean. So let me give you an analogy. Let's say you have different set of keys in your life. You have your car keys, you have your mailbox keys, you have your house keys. You're not going to carry them individually, so you're going to put them all on a keychain. It's just the same for these 24 words. Those 24 words are the keychain that will hold all the what I call the private keys of your Bitcoin account. So when you actually, I say Bitcoin when I say cryptocurrency accounts. When you own a cryptocurrency, when you control a cryptocurrency, what you actually own are the means to spend it. The Bitcoins never leave the blockchain. When you have a ledger and an OS and you store a Bitcoin on it, the Bitcoin never leaves the blockchain. What is stored on the ledger and an OS is the private key that will be used to sign a transaction. So if you have one Bitcoin on address A, you and only you will have the means to sign a transaction on address A to say, I want to spend one Bitcoin. So those 24 words are a very, very neat way to fix a problem that previous wallet software had in the beginning of Bitcoin. They were called a JBox, for just a bunch of keys. So you could generate addresses individually, but it would be as having on 100 keys to manage. And that's very difficult because you need to remember which key is used for what. And let's say, it spreads the risk. You have a larger attack surface. So the open source community actually came up with a very, very neat way to do that. And it's to have one master password, one master keychain that is called the seed. And these are your 24 words. And every single account that you will create will be derived. So that you have a bit of a recipe. So if you put the same seed and you follow the same instructions, that's what the software are doing. So that's why if you put your 24 word in the NanoS or any other what is called hierarchical deterministic wallet that follows the standard, you will always find your keys. So your 24 words are essentially a cryptographic keychain.
Got it. Thank you. And Fabrice, what is the difference between Ledger and other hardware wallets? Are any other hardware wallets using 24 words as well? Tell us what's going on.
So yeah, actually, most of the wallets, whether they are software wallets or hardware wallets, are using the same standard. They rely on this hierarchical deterministic account creation and key management. But we use at Ledger 24 words by default because it generates, let's say, a lot of complexity. So it's harder to guess. But you could do it with 8 words or 12 or whatever number. Actually, it's possible to create those words how you want. It's very important because we didn't underline it, so maybe I should, but it's very important that these master password, like Sylv said, you never disclose it to anyone, because if you disclose it, if you tell this password to anyone, then this person you talked with, they will get access to all your accounts. So yes, it's very easy to have one single password, but it's a lot of responsibility, because if you share it, you can lose everything in the blink of an eye. So 24 words only for you. Even Ledger will never ask for them, so never provide them to anyone. And
absolutely, to stress what Fabrice said, if someone asks for your 24 words, you never give your 24 words. Ledger will never ask for your 24 words.
And about your question about hardware wallets and what makes Ledger devices different, I would say it's really we have two main like advantages, I would say, compared to other hardware wallets. First of all, we use a specific type of chip. So the hardware itself, the components that we use are certified, and that's why we can call them secure elements. So basically, they are very, very hard to hack. You cannot see what is inside the memory. You cannot X-ray them. You cannot see how the circuits, the internal circuits are made. And so this really prevents anyone from physically trying to access secrets that are stored within the device. So this is the secure element part. But another, I would say, advantage that we have is that we design our own operating system. So the same way on your phone, or let's say Android phone, you would have an operating system, and on top of which you have applications. We did the same. We designed an operating system that runs inside the secure element. And on top of this operating system, you can install as many applications as you want. So these applications will all have very specific properties. So for instance, when you install the Bitcoin application, you are able to interpret and understand and see on your screen the details of your Bitcoin transaction. But if you use the same application with Ethereum, it will not work. We are segregating everything between applications. So if you have the Bitcoin application and the Ethereum application, by opening one, you will be able to transact on Ethereum, but not on Bitcoin. And simultaneously, you will not be able to use it on Bitcoin with the Ethereum application. This brings, let's say, an additional level of security, because we are really segregating all blockchains, so that in the very unlucky case where an application would have a vulnerability, it will just impact this asset and not the other one. Because remember, if the 24 words are inside this, and you have access to the 24 words, you can take everything. The 24 words is like really the most important thing to protect. And on top of that, you have several applications that you can install and uninstall at your whenever you want actually, and they will provide you all the means to interact with the specific blockchains that you like. So it's not necessary to have all the applications installed all the time. You can just uninstall or reinstall. Because the 24 words are still there, you will retrieve all your coins, whether they are on Ethereum, on Tezos, or on Bitcoin. It doesn't matter as long as the 24 words are inside the device.
Got it. So those 24 words are needed, guys. So we need to remember to always keep those safe. Do you guys have any tips to everyone watching of maybe how to store your 24 words correctly, or what should people do?
The first thing you should do if you bought a Ledger product is to follow exactly the instructions that are inside the box. So as a rule of thumb, you should never store your 24 words online. You should not store them on an email. You should not store them on a Google Sheet or on a computer, even if it's an air-gapped computer. What you have to do is you initialize your device, you write down your 24 words, and then you lock it away. If possible, in a bank safe or in an actual vault that you own, or you hide it. It depends on, I would say, on your risk appetite. If you have $5, you can put it on your fridge for convenience. But if you have a lot of money, you would rather take it extremely seriously and actually consider buying a bank vault or using a banking facility or banking facility.
I would say some people are actually, dividing their words. So they have 24 words and they decide, okay, yeah, why not just put 8 on this place, 8 here, and 8 there? That might work. But if you lose a portion of the words, it's not possible to retrieve the 24 words. And so you might actually lose the access to your assets. So one important thing to realize, it's always very good to have a backup of your 24 words. Indeed, it's important because Ledger hardware wallets are secure and let's say reliable, but you never know, maybe you will just lose it. And what can you do in that case? You just have to get a new one and reinitialize it with the same words, and you will retrieve your assets. If you lost your 24 words, unfortunately, there is no way for anyone to retrieve the funds. It's important because, once again, some people will come and say, I can help you. And the truth is, no, they can't. There is no way to retrieve your password if you actually forgot it. So once again, you have to be fairly responsible and you have to take care of the security of these words and not share them with anyone.
Thanks, guys. We definitely appreciated that. It was great information. Now we are going to go ask some questions that the people watching have been asking. And guys, if you would like to ask questions to Fabrice and Sylve, please go in the chat and ask your questions there, and I will make sure to ask them the questions. The first question that we had is, what is the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
You do it, Sylve, or I do?
Rock, paper, scissors.
I'll try this one. So basically, this relates to a concept often, which is understandable for many developers, but maybe not for all the people. It's the concept of fork. And what does it mean exactly is reusing a part of the software. So we explained that the Bitcoin network is running because many people are actually running nodes, and nodes are just the Bitcoin software run on the machine. Could be a server, could be your laptop, could be any computer that you have. But this code is open source, so anyone can check it. Anyone can look it up on GitHub, and everything is free. You can actually take this code, modify it a bit, and run it as well. So that's exactly what Bitcoin Cash is. It's a fork of the Bitcoin original code. So basically, they just modified some parameters about the Bitcoin protocol, and they changed a bunch of things on block size or anything related to actually what makes Bitcoin different from Bitcoin Cash would be parameters in the Bitcoin blockchain, from the Bitcoin blockchain. So they are very close in the way they work. Most of the, let's say, underlying intricacies are really exactly, almost exactly the same. That's why at some point when you owned Bitcoin and when there was this fork, you automatically got the exact same amount of Bitcoin Cash and of Bitcoin. So when there is a fork, the network will be segregated. You create a new network out of, let's say, out of thin air. And people running the old Bitcoin node will still be on the Bitcoin network. And the people who decided to move away and use this fork version of the code will now run the Bitcoin Cash network. And so basically, you can do it as many times as you want. And that's exactly what happened. Then Bitcoin Cash forked again, and there were like two new network created from Bitcoin Cash. But you can create fork like this, but you can also just take the code, modify it entirely, change the name, make it a joke, and then in the end, you can create your own Bitcoin network if you want. That's entirely possible. And that's because everything is open source and available online. So once again, transparency is great, but now we have this complexity of let's say, clone of the Bitcoin blockchain. I would say the main difference, one of the most important difference at least, is that many people are really heavily working on the Bitcoin core protocol, so the original Bitcoin protocol, let's say, the oldest one at least, and there is a lot of computing power there. So a lot of miners are actually working on this specific type of Bitcoin program. And this is important because the security of the network comes from the processing power. So as many people you have, the more people you have, let's say, the more secure the network will be. So it's important to really look at what they call the hashing power of a network to estimate how secure it is compared to another.
Thank you. The next question that we have is, why are wallets so hard? I mean, why is there not a simple interface that does not include giant scary chains of numbers and letters? Can Ledger improve this aspect?
Picking this one. So when I was talking about the characteristics of blockchain, that's one of the drawback. Blockchain technology, and let's take Bitcoin for instance, it gives you a lot of power, it gives you a lot of control over the assets. But just like in the Spider-Man movie, a great power comes great responsibility, and that's the drawback. So if you're able to completely own your Bitcoin, that means that you own the way to lose it also. So I completely agree with you that it's a challenging industry, it's a challenging product also. I would compare it to running an email server in the 80s. It's still really complicated. And if we need to have mass adoption of this new technology, we need to definitely work on this. I would say that fundamentally, there will always remain something intrinsically hard about managing cryptocurrencies. When we talk about, for instance, the 24 words that you see are already a user experience improvement because it's way easier to write down and remember 24 words than 266 bits of data. It's extremely difficult to do this. So you already have some ways to do that. And of course, the industry will move towards helping our users managing this more easily. For instance, on the Ledger Live, there are a lot of great initiatives to help users ramp up and understand better how everything works. But I will say that in the end, if you decide to own cryptocurrencies, it comes at the expense of some things such as usability, I would say. If you want something that's easily usable, you can use a banking app. If you want to completely own your assets, you will use a cryptocurrency.
Thank you. Next question is, what coin is adding up this week?
I believe that was like one of the questions that we asked on Twitter. Maybe this person can just be a little more patient, just a few days ahead, and this person will get the answer.
Okay. Next question. Are some coins harder to integrate to Ledger Live than others? Is it, for example, the reason Cardano is not integrated yet?
So there are definitely blockchain that are, let's say, maybe not more complex, but more difficult to integrate within Ledger Live, indeed. I cannot say for Cardano if it's exactly the case. As many Cardano followers might know, there are like some big updates coming in for Cardano with the Shelly update. So I would say it's not really harder to integrate, but it's probably not the right time because there will be all those changes. Nevertheless, there are cryptocurrencies that are harder to integrate. We were mentioning Monero a bit earlier. When you have these privacy features, that changes a lot the user interface. So, for instance, on the hardware wallet, you can definitely manage your Monero. It's not an issue. But to do this in a user-friendly way, it's really more complex. You have to run your own node. You have to know exactly what you're doing. It's kind of complex. Actually, if I remember correctly, Sil, you lost a bunch of Monero because you just messed up with the installation. So it's not really easy to do. And I would say it's a case by case analysis. Some assets which are very close to Bitcoin might be very, very easy to integrate, but some new blockchains with new mechanism like proof of stake blockchains, they require not only to work on the underlying mechanism, but they also require us to update the user interface, to create new screens, and all of this creates additional complexity, I would say. So case by case analysis would be my answer.
Okay. The next question that we have for you guys is, I'm so sorry, let's see here. Why are we so limited to what coins we store on Ledger? I wanted to put my ADA on Ledger, but it won't allow.
Well, say ADA is actually the Cardano assets. So yeah, the question about adding Cardano is definitely a good question. But you can still use your Ledger hardware wallet. The Yoroi wallet, for instance, is working correctly. So you can install the Cardano application by going to Ledger Live manager section. You install the application. If it's not clear for you, there is definitely a support page on our website that can help you and guide you to use a different wallet. It won't be Ledger Live, at least not for now. But you will still be able to enjoy the security of Ledger hardware wallet with other wallet provider. That's also something that we didn't actually discuss, but we created those devices, but we wanted them to be as easy to use for many developers as possible. So anyone with who wants to create their own application, they can actually do it. We have documentation to explain how to do so. It's a bit complex, to be honest, but if you're a developer, why not try? And for people who wants to create their own software wallet or let's say companion application that interact with the device, it's definitely possible to do. So if you go on our website, you will see that, of course, some assets are listed in Ledger Live, and we plan to add more and more this year and the next year. But if you don't find the asset on Ledger Live, still you can have a look at our website because there are probably other wallets that are compatible with the Ledger device and that can allow you to manage your funds securely.
Thank you. The next question that we have is, if I update from old Ledger Chrome to Ledger Live, do I lose the coins on the Ledger Nano S?
As long as you have your 24 words, you will not lose your coins. So the answer is moving from that. This is the example that Fabrice gave. Moving from the Chrome apps to the Ledger Live would be from moving from one wallet to another. If you still have your Ledger Nano S and if you still have your 24 words, you will just connect to the Ledger Live. It will prompt you. It will ask you, oh, do you want to initialize a new device or use a device that you already have? And you select, I already have a device. You connect it, and then you will magically see all your funds appear on the Ledger Live. So don't be afraid. Your funds are still here.
David asks, how often do I need to check the charge of my ledger? Can I store it for years and not look at the charge?
So I guess the charge is for the Nano X, right? Because we have two devices, the Nano S and the Nano X. The Nano S doesn't have any battery. So there is no charge possible. For the Nano X, I would say it won't last years, okay? But it will last at least a couple of days, maybe even weeks if you don't use it, if it's fully charged. And it will last a couple of hours if it's charged, but if you keep it, let's say, open and working. I'm not sure I'm answering the question correctly, but I guess that was it.
Mhm.
If it's not the right, if it's not the right answer, please try again, and we'll try to answer.
The next question is, how do you guys help people get started?
That's a really good question, and that's something that is very, I would say, very tricky for Ledger to do, because for some people, their first gateway into blockchain is through Ledger. They saw advertisements, they heard about it with their friends. They say, "Oh yeah, just buy a Nano and you can get started." So as a company, we also have a responsibility of helping users ramp up. So this is why we're doing this AMA, for instance. We've also created some content on the Ledger website to help you better understand, for instance, why the 24 words are important, what kind of attacks you can be targeted with, or also very technical questions such as what's a halving, or we really want this ecosystem to grow, and we want this ecosystem to be secure. We cannot be successful as a company if no one understands how this thing works. So definitely, Ledger's making great efforts to try and educate users. And definitely, if there's some topics that you think you would like to have Ledger's opinion on, or have Ledger write an article about, you can definitely say it in the comments or send us an email. We'll be happy to tackle it.
Someone asked, is it possible that Ledger runs its self blockchain?
Oh, running our own blockchain. That's sounds like a plan. So let's try it. We could definitely maybe try. Okay, but I don't think it's our core business proposal. We are really a security company, so our goal is to bring security to any type of industry, and blockchain industry is clearly one good example. But it could be the banking system, it could be industrial company, and what we bring is security. So I would say blockchain is just a great use case, but running our own blockchain, it could look like a scam attempt as well. So I don't think it's a great idea for now, but if our strategy changes, why not? We'll let us know.
Okay. Next question. When are you going to integrate dark mode on Ledger Live app on iPhone?
The dark mode on the mobile version. So it's a shame because Benjamin was there, I think, past week, and he's the product manager of the Ledger Live software. And definitely, I will try something. Maybe you will blame me for this, but this is something that they are thinking about. I don't have the exact time yet, but definitely we know this is a highly requested feature.
Thanks, guys. Just going to scan for a few more questions. Let's see. When will credit CS be added?
Well, I am not entirely sure because first of all, I am not sure I know this cryptocurrency. So if it's a token, it's probably already supported because most of the tokens on the Ethereum blockchain are supported on Ledger Live. If it's another chain, the first question should be, okay, do we have or is there already a device application for it? If you don't have the device application, there is no way you can interact with Ledger software because our security relies on the device. And without the application on the device, we won't be supporting the asset. But once again, anyone can try to build their own application for the Nano or Ledger hardware wallet in general.
The next question is, in the 24 words, can one word repeat itself? Is that a possibility?
Oh, good question. Yes. I think yes.
Yes, it's definitely possible. You can have the same word twice. They are selected like randomly, okay? And it's important to notice that those 24 words, I like to say it's your DNA on the blockchain. So whatever blockchain is, whatever if it's Ethereum or Bitcoin, those 24 words will help identify you, or at least your accounts. But for it to be really secure, you need to select those 24 words randomly, because all this security comes from the fact that having 24 words taken from a big dictionary of 2048 words works. But if you choose your words to create a sentence or to do something that you think is clever, maybe someone else thought of it and is doing exactly the same. But the only way to make it really secure is to have it randomly generated. And to have true random generation, this is very complex. Even on the software side, this is complex to do. Hence the reason why we actually show the words on the device. They are randomly generated within the secure element. And the secure element is really the key here because we have a truly random function, a true random function. And that's important. So because it's random, in theory, there is no, it's possible that you have one or even twice or once, twice, 3 times the same word. It's random. So why not?
So Fabrice, thank you so much for joining us today. We definitely appreciated getting the lowdown on blockchain 101. We really, really thank you guys for your time. People out there watching, if you have any more questions, don't forget to look us up on ledger.com. Reach out to us by email, Twitter, Facebook, any way you want to reach out to us. We're always available. Next week, we are going to be here with our CEO, Pascal, talking about the future. That's going to be May 5th, 5 p.m. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks, Sylvain, Fabrice. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Ashley. It was a blast.
Thank you.